There's a lot of pride and passion that I guess is supposed to swell in the chests of us plain captains for who we are and all that we're about. Feeling it resonating within our chest cavities as we breathe in the illustrious air of our shop that holds years and years of glorious maritime history, of all those that came before us, all those proud seamen that were honored a chance to serve our nation within the confines of the shop, back then as we are now. I guess they're supposed to be. I really would like there to be, but for whatever reason, I have yet to feel that sense of pride and passion swell within me. In and of itself, the Lion Shack really isn't much to look at. The shop really is just a dingy shack, a hole in the wall, a level below the flight deck. Seemingly a forgotten place abandoned by a crew of more respectable professionals that now only used by them to dump all their tools and gear that they no longer find any use in. All along the port end, you'd see a row of flight jackets hung up on ropes, spanning across that end of the shop. Brown flight jackets that are all jaded and faded and covered with the sort of soot that you'd find coming off of corrosive rust. As for along the starboard end, mostly what you'd see are ugly metal boxes stacked up on top of one another. Some set up like tables, others set up as a place to sit. And at one end, there are boxes stacked up way too dangerously high, which I always find unnerving how some PCs will sit under, without seeming much at all concerned. Also along the starboard end, there is a row of hook-ended chains hung up all along the shelf that is attached to that bulkhead, hung up and dangling all the way down to the deck. Lots and lots of the grimy-looking fuckers, all hung up, which now and then you'll see swinging from side to side and then freeze in place, always giving us a sense whenever the ship began turning. Overall, to best describe the Lion Shack would be to give you a summary of the color brown, mixed in with the color gray, with a dash of something colored ugly. Plus lots and lots of hook-ended chains. Oh, and let's not forget its inhabitants. As for the rundown, every swinging dick the 83 had rounded up in a moment's notice while our chiefs continued snoring away inside 104's cockpit. AM3 Katzenberg and AN Hathaway had shown up, the brothers, Cats and Hats. One from Huntington Beach, California, the other from Denver, Colorado. A surfer and a snowboarder, so of course they would become brothers. One sandy, blonde sandy like the 70s, and the other a curly brunette like the 80s. Two very mischievous, preppy-looking white boys you'd always expect to be behind the most heinous acts of pranking one can imagine, and capable of the sort of devious shit that required at least a bottle of Jack Daniels, no memories of what came after, to be accomplished. Airman Derbytown had shown up from Compton, California. The fascinatingly eccentric Derbytown, the fantastic Mr. Derby. Black and stout, who when I first met went into a hefty story about himself and that peculiar name of his that he had changed to. A hefty long story about hating his deadbeat dad, wanting to change his surname, and how he went his entire junior and senior years in high school wearing derby hats. And I agree, Derbytown doesn't come off as playing with a full deck of cards with me either. And this is the character I remember that had one time decided to wear his derby hat instead of the official Dixie cup with our ceremonious Cracker Jacks, the day we all mustered in our hangar for a squadron photo. In the last minute, he switched it over to that special brown derby of his that has a Joker card stuffed behind the ribbon, and didn't think he would get caught since there were a couple of hundred of us in formation. Aye, sir, after that, our CO, commanding officer, aka Charlie Oscar, wanted to personally have a chat with him, but not to berate the man, even though our AMCS later on did. Just to figure out what was exactly going on in his head when he decided to do such a nonsensical thing. In the end, our CO came back with nothing but a shrug. When I remember a bunch of maintenance chiefs had asked him about what Derbytown's deal was, a shrug and a look on his face that pretty much spelled out, let's just say he's special. And if you think that's the extent of Derbytown's eccentricity, well, the rest calls for a story another time. AEAN Barbarossa and AEAN Navarro have shown up, both from San Diego, California. More people from SoCal, amazingly enough, and I'll get to it later why that's so important in our shop. Two giant Mexicans, one AEAN Navarro that's mischievously tall, the other AEAN Barbarossa that's simply massive. Massive enough to even scare Quimby. Actually more massive than him, so he does scare Quimby. Always standing high with a massive smile on his face like nothing could ever bring him down. He's one jolly giant which the women love, and when he picks up women in bars, he'll literally pick them up. Set one lengthy woman on one shoulder and two stout ones on the other, and take them all home for a nightcap. AEAN Navarro not so much. He's too cholo to be likable, and he always has a look about him like he's plotting to do some good-for-nothing thug life gangsta shit when no one's looking. And finally, Airman Donnelly from Boston, Massachusetts. As for the rest of Night Check, ATAN Pflugerville from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, hasn't shown up, but since he's a fat nerd, I'm sure the IS-3 isn't willing to put him up for what's about to go down. Neither has Airman Royster from Detroit, Michigan. But not seeing him around isn't a surprise to me, considering he's the biggest deli-gaffing bastard in the line. And so, this is what it's all coming down to, think I, as I look around at all the faces around me. The line shack is now jam-packed with us brown shirts, all crouching and standing, sitting in chairs laying way too far back, or sitting like patient Indians on the deck with their legs crossed. Everyone's leaning on something or somebody to get comfortable, since the shop has no cushy furniture to find comfort in. We're all sitting around placing our feet on all the metal boxes trashed about. Then there's Katzenberg sitting in a chair who has his feet up on Derbytown's shoulder, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek comical. Watching Derbytown's getting all passively angry and knocking them down like they aren't that much of a bother, just to have Katzenberg place them back up all sneaky like. Aye. So many turd shirts around now stinking up the joint that it's making me want to look for the handle to turn to flush them all down the toilet. Us damn turd shirts, and damn are we stinking up the joint too, both in the figurative and literal sense of the word. Right now, we have so many of us jolly squids around trying to get all fresh and comical with each other to pass the time that with every minute that passes, the volumes of our voices that are already engaged in full-blown horsing around keeps getting turned up a notch. So right now, we're all experiencing that thing one has in crowds, where we all keep testing to see how much louder we can raise our voices till somebody barges in and begins yelling at everyone to shut the fuck up. How obnoxious and annoying we all can get before a first class or khaki runs in and begins tearing up the joint. Now personally, I would be willing to join in on the planned food-minded fun and not be so self-aware and self-annoyed over how much of a bunch of jolly dumb fuckfaces we all really are. But right now, I just can't get my old RDC's words out of my head as they keep ringing in over everything they meant and how they pertain to what's about to go down. And what's about to go down, you might be wondering, well, you'll see.